Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbes, and welcome to Oral Gibbes Live, coming to you live here from World Star Studios at Amsterdam Shopping Center. And with me this evening, I have none other than Mr. Reginald Willemsberg. Mr. Willemsberg is the corporate strategist at the SZV here in St. Martin. And Mr. Willemsberg, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me here. Good night to you and to your televiewers, listeners.
All right, and thank you for coming. We're wearing almost the same color jacket there.
Yeah, they say great minds think alike, you know.
So things been going so far?
We've been doing good. And, we have a lot of changes, and I've changed my function, as you just stated. I've moved out of the operational part and more into a strategic and advisory role, which is something completely new, but based on my my experience and knowledge, and also my international contacts. That is where the new directive found it necessary to place me, so that they could make to get a better advantage of the knowledge and experience that I have.
I don't think, and I hope I'm not offending anyone here, but I don't think there's a person at the SZV with more knowledge of the operations than you, since you've been there for quite some time, right?
Well, yeah, well, that's true, but as they say, no one is there permanent and is unmissable. So what we have to make space and to create situations where that the other people in the company can grow, or positions other people can fill in the positions, so that we have a more balanced company. And as I said, this position I am in, I believe, and those who appointed me there also believe that I could be more of an advantage for the company, not only for me personally, but also to the company, the SZV, and of course, because we serve the people of St. Martin, also an advantage to the people of St. Martin.
Now, it's a huge operation when you look back where you all used to be today.
Definitely.
It's amazing how many people pass through the office.
Yes, if I remember when I started working, we was in Back Street.
Right.
And that at the time at SVB and Back Street there, where we had about 9 people working, and now we went through 10-10-10. Our own organization, the SZV, was established. We had a merger of the SVB staff and the BZV staff that was separate entities at that time. They came together, and we grew up. At that time, we were in 10-10-10. We were about 33, 34 staff members. And then to now, we are about 95 staff members, because compared to what we had at that time, we were just a branch office of the SVB station with a headquarters station in Curacao. And as of 10-10-10, basically 2011, we had to start doing everything ourselves. So that means we had to get all our staff, all our positions in place, so that we can do everything that before used to be done mainly in Curacao, had to be done now here. So, and that entailed that we grew very fast from, like I said, we always three times the staff that we had at 10-10-10.
So, you know, for the average person, I have a lot of new people watching this program. Some are not too familiar with the SZV. What is the SZV?
Well, the SZV is the entity that has been tasked to implement the social insurances in St. Martin. And these social insurances, in any case, some of the insurances that we implement are those are the AOV, the old age insurance, the AWW is the widows and orphans pension. We have the sickness insurance, the ZV, the OV is the accident insurance, or occupational accident insurance as we call it. We have the AVBZ, that's the chronic illness special insurance. And the FZOG is the fund for sickness of pensioned civil servants. And last but not least, not a fund, Now, another fund we call the SZV, the Severance Pay Fund. And then we have, last but not least, we also administer the medical expenses for government, what we call it in our lingo, the OZR, so government medical insurance.
Now, one of the things that I want to speak with you about is pension. That's why we ask you if you can be on this program, and you comply. And we appreciate that you're here tonight to probably explain, because sometimes many of us here in the island, we're not too aware of the pension and how it works, and who qualifies, who doesn't qualify, and how many years before you qualify, etc. So off the top, the old age pension, that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
now, this is regulated by law.
Yes, it's regulated by law. The law states specifically who is insured, how much they have to get, what qualifies you as what we call an insured, and what happens if you pass away, what happens if you move away, when you come back, and all of those things. All those points are regulated by law. And one of the things that we noticed, and that's why I gladly accepted your invitation, is because a lot of people are not aware what their rights and obligations are. How many times I have met people, and they have been 62, 61, 62, and they say, yeah, they're having problems with financial problems. And then it's like, then they find out, hey, but have you ever applied for old age pension? And they never knew about it. It's all the neighbor told him, or a friend or a family told him. And then they come to ask a question, and then they find out that they're entitled. And but they lose in that sense, because instead of getting it from the time that they were entitled to it, they end up getting it because they were late. They end up getting it at a later stage, which, as long as you get it, it's still good. The law was established in 1960, and basically was the first health insurance, not health insurance, national insurance that was established for at the time, the SVB, to introduce. The 1st of September 1960 is the AOV, or General Old Age Insurance. And to start off, who are insured? Because for you to be able to qualify to get a pension, you have to be insured. And this insurance is for persons it's an insurance against the risk of, the financial risk of becoming older, the old age. At that time, when the law started, it was at 65. The age was 65. And then in 1985, in 1975, it was changed to 62. And then in 1990, it went down to 60, which, to tell you the truth, we are the only country, as far as I've been able to find out, that instead of raising the age, has been lowering the age. And all over the world, the countries are raising the age. But for whatever reason, whatever reason they had, it was lowered up to 60 in 1990. Up to recently now, it has been increased for St. Martin. It has increased to 62, and that will go into effect the 1st of January 2018. But I'll give you some more information on that afterwards. But basically, once the law states that only those that are insured can qualify to get an old age pension when they reach the age, whatever age it is at that time. And what do they say? For you to, by virtue, first of all, by virtue of being a citizen, being a resident of St. Martin, and in principle, that means that you are registered at the census office as a resident of St. Martin, as ingezetene, as we say in Dutch, and you are insured.
So let me ask Mr. Willemsberg, sorry. So you don't have to be a Dutch citizen, you just have to be registered?
You have to be registered as a resident.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with the nationality. Once you are registered, that is already enough. For those persons who are non-citizens, so non-resident, but they are working in St. Martin, and they have qualified, they have paid or have been assessed for income tax. That means that you put in your tax return and you get an assessment for the tax return, whatever it is. As you know, when you put in for income, you fill in your tax return. It's two assessments you get from that return. One is the income tax, and the other one is the AOV, AWW. So for you to be able to qualify, you must have put in your tax return for you then to qualify to be able to prove that you were a taxpayer. That is for non-residents. And thirdly, for persons who are not working here, not on the island, cannot be considered resident, but by virtue of working for St. Martin, for example, and an example could be the Ministerial Plenipotentiary in the Netherlands, or whichever station the people are working on behalf of the government of St. Martin, or for a company that is established in St. Martin, but you're working in Sabre, like you're working with roads, and they send you to work in Sabre for a year. By virtue of doing that, you're being paid by an entity in St. Martin, you are considered also insured. But of course, all these three cases, you have to be able to prove that, one, or you were registered at the census office, so that means you have to bring in proof that you were registered for the period. And the period that we look at is from the time you was 15 years old to the time that you reach the age. Up to now, it's 60. So for 45 years, you must have been registered for you to qualify for the maximum amount of pension. If you were a non-resident, the only way you can prove that you were working here is not by presenting payslips or job letters, but getting a declaration from the tax office stating that, yes, Mr. Willemsberg is known for us from X date to X date. He has been, he's known and he has been putting in his tax return and so on. And in case of a person that is working abroad, they also have to be able to prove that although they were not living here, they were being taxed for income in St. Martin. So it's very clear in that. And as a matter of fact, I'll go even further. That's what I've just stated is Article 5 of the ordinance on AOV. But in Article 32, it stated clearly that any person that feels that can get rights from the AOV, they must, and I say must have put in their tax return. Because if they have not put in a tax return, and in so doing, it becomes difficult for the SZV to determine if, one, they paid any premium, or if they were contributing, or if they paid enough premium. So, and if they are considered having not paid enough premium or have not paid premium, they can be considered delinquent. Now, in practice, we don't really apply this particular part of the law because already when a person applies and he cannot prove that he or she paid old age pension, AOV premium, because the tax office, they have not put in their tax return, then we automatically, for those years that they cannot prove that, we always put a deduction and we calculate. So like I said before, you have maximum 45 years that you have to be insured for you to get the maximum. The maximum at this moment is 1,060 guilders a month. So for you to get, in 2016, for you to get 1,060 guilders, that means from the age 15 to age 60, you were living in St. Martin, working in St. Martin, and for 45 years, and that's how you get the maximum. For each year that you were not here, or you cannot prove that you were here, or that you were known by the tax office, so that you put in your tax return, for each year we give you a deduction. And that it could add up a lot depending how many years you were not known. So for example, a person who from the 45 years, he only lived 35 years here, that means 10 years the person was not here, or was not able to prove that he was here, those 10 years, then we would calculate a percentage, and then we determine what the deduction is, and then, for example, if for 10 years, you might be able to say, let's say that would be about a 25%, 27% deduction. So that the pension that a person would get then would be, if it's 25%, that means they would only get 75% of the maximum. So, and that is how it is done to determine. Now, of course, if for whatever reason the initial information that we received was incorrect, you don't necessarily have to agree with the decision, so you can protest it. And if you could come with proof to prove that documents, evidence to prove that you were here, or that you can prove that you did pay taxes by means of having a documentation from the tax office, which can also be an old assessment that you received, old assessment, or if you had a payment arrangement by the island receiver at that time, the receiver's office, that you had a payment arrangement to pay back, whatever you have to pay, or you had to get back money, so you have proof that you got back money from the government. So we can use those, because those are documents that were issued by the government at that time. So we can use those documentations to prove. We have had some cases of persons who have gone into protest, and they were able to provide these documents, and we made a correction so they could get their at least the deduction will become less, because not necessarily that if they can't prove the full 100%, then you can't get 100%. But in any case, you must have lived here 45 years for you to get a full percent. Anytime, I'll use myself as an example, I came to live here in 1988, so that means I would basically never qualify for the full amount of the old age pension of St. Martin, because I'm only here right now I'm 28 years living in St. Martin, so by the time I reach 60 or 62, I'll be maybe maybe 35 years. So I'll never reach the 45 or 47 years, whatever it is.
But because you came from the former Netherlands and Curaçao,
yes,
they can't add that?
No, they can't add that. And that's another, that's another important thing, that since 10-10-10, one of the agreements that was made between the new countries is that all new persons that become pensionable after 10-10-10, they get the pension from the countries where they live. And if they live in Curaçao, Aruba, Saba, Statia, or Bonaire, then they have to apply to those countries also to get the pension. So in my example, in my case, I would have to apply to St. Martin to get my whatever amount of years I lived here. And for the years that I lived in Curaçao, which I lived, we could count from 15 to 25, so the 10 years that I would be missing here, those 10 years I have to apply to Curaçao for the pension. The difference is Curaçao, the age is 65 now. So if I would make 60 this year, then I would have to wait until I make 65 to apply for Curaçao. So, but once you know that the same thing, if I lived in Holland, I also could apply for my pension, but then I would have to wait until I reach the age. And the Netherlands is right now 67, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that is the difference. But where you've built up your rights, as we call the vested rights for pensionable rights, there you have to apply.
Let me ask this, because the thing is, take for example, I was born in a different country, right? Mm-hmm. And I came to St. Martin at age 35. I registered at the civil registry, mm-hmm. but I never did a stroke of work. Mm-hmm. And now I'm 62. Am I eligible?
As I said, we started out first. The first qualification...
I put it like that for a reason.
The first criteria is if you are a resident. By virtue of being a resident of St. Martin, it doesn't matter what nationality you have.
You're registered.
You're registered at the census office, and you have really lived. So not just registered at the census office and you live somewhere else, because we know many cases people who are registered in the census office here, but they live on the French side, or they live in Anguilla and they just come here a few times, or they have some kids. If we have indications in that direction, we do investigate and look, the whole thing is we expect that you tell the truth when you apply. So if there's any reason for us to doubt, and you know, St. Martin is small, so Oral, no, but Oral, we know Oral, he don't live here. He live on the French side. He have an address, he have a resident on the French side. So we investigate, ask for information, and then once we get, of course, it have to be corroborated. If we can't prove it, it becomes difficult. So we can't take decisions on hearsay. We have to take decisions based on facts. And once we have the facts, we take the decision. And coming back to your question, you come here at 35, you're from St. Kitts, you're from St. Lucia, wherever it is, you're from the States. You come here at 35, and for whatever reason, you never hit a stroke of work. But you're a resident. By virtue of being a resident, you are entitled to a pension. And
well, you know, I'm glad, the reason why I ask you that question and ask it over again like that is because when I mentioned that a few months ago here in this program, people said it wasn't true.
Well, but because a lot of people don't know, because a lot of people believe that the Dutch nationality is a qualification for you to get pension. And the law doesn't say that. There are some articles that mention the Dutch nationality, but those are specific cases, and that has nothing to do with the rights. It has more to do if you for those persons that were not insured before 1960. And right now, we don't have any new pensioners that come in that would necessitate going to that article, what we call Article 41, 42, 43, where we have to look to see what nationality the person had. In principle, any person, right now, all new pensioners, we don't need to use that article. So basically, it's become obsolete. So by virtue of being a resident, and people will find that strange. Now, it could be someone that came in, and once you are, and for you to become a resident, of course, you have to have a legal residency. And because what this law was looking at when it was introduced is to take care of those people who, that could not have taken care of themselves and didn't have a structured way of assisting them. Because before 1960, what we used to have the churches used to be helping people, or people dependent on family. And that's basically one of the reasons that a lot of family in those days used to talk about they had 12 and 13 children and all of that, because my children will take care of me. But slowly but surely, the families become smaller, and you didn't have the situation that everyone has someone to take care of them. Or even that person that is a resident, he's living here, but for whatever reason, he or she might be the only person here. He doesn't have no family here. So no one to take care of that person if something happens. So based on that, the AOV was introduced. And remember, in those days, we had a lot of persons that housewives, that be it by choice, I think in those days it was more that they didn't have a choice, or even now, by choice decide, listen, I want to take care of my children. I want to be a housewife and take care of my family, so I don't need to go to work. Now, are you going to punish that person because the person make that choice? And as I said, our system is not a what we call contributory system. If you go to other islands in Anguilla, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, they have a system, a contributory system, so that you can only get pension if you contributed. In our system is a hybrid, so it's a dual system that is or by virtue of residency or by virtue of contributing. So the point of departure is that if, in most cases, if you are a resident, you are also contributing because you have worked. But what about the disabled, the physically or mentally challenged person that cannot or would not have ever be able to work? They will never be able to contribute. So are you going to say, hey, I'm not going to, tough luck, they have to look after themselves? No, the law has provided that by virtue of being a resident, they can get old age pension.
So we go back again, it's if you're born here and from age 15, you live 45 years, you get full pension, right?
Correct.
And then if you came from somewhere and you're registered, you get your pension based on the amount of years you registered.
That's correct.
And if you're working, contributing the premiums to AOV, you also get.
And you put in your tax return. Again, people just forget that. You have to put in your tax return. And if you put, because if you're not a resident, the only way you could prove that you were insured is by bringing that tax declaration that, hey, Willemsberg has been paying, is known by the tax office for X period.
It can be from the company I worked for?
No, the law is very clear on that.
Okay.
The law is stating that, one, that you must have put in your tax return and you must have been assessed.
Okay.
So, and how do you prove that? Is by getting assessment, be it, or even if you don't, even if you can't find the assessment, but if you could find an arrangement, a payment arrangement, a settlement that you had with the tax office in the past, that you can prove that you were paying, that is also qualifies.
Wouldn't it become more difficult now saying that we're no longer part of Nelson Tilly's since 10, you can't find anything from the former Nelson Tilly's that easily in some cases?
You know, one of the things that personally I've been thinking about, and we've been discussing it at our office, and maybe if you hear a lot of complaints that we have of persons who live on a franchise that cannot prove that they are not that they were insured, it's ironic that at this moment, because of what the law states, we cannot use certain information that we have in-house. Because we have some information that we corroborate if a person was working here or not. But because the law is stating that, listen, the only 3 ways you can prove, there's only 2 ways you can prove that you were insured. It's all by being a resident, or by being a non-resident, but you can prove that you have put in your tax return and you've been assessed. Those are the 2 ways. If anything, we are discussing, we don't know in what way or manners yet, but I believe that it's time now that we change the law, because when these laws came into effect, it didn't take in consideration the situation of St. Martin. Okay, because in Curacao you don't have, if you live in Bandabao or live in Bandariba or Willemstad, it doesn't matter because it's Curacao. In St. Martin, they didn't take in consideration that you have 2 countries. You have the French side and you have the Dutch side. So that it has its repercussion. So I believe it's time that, and we have given advice, the minister, the present minister has asked for an advice on this specific situation, and we have given our advice as to what we think should be done. And basically what has to be done is some change, amendment have to be made in the law, because you can make exceptions for a particular group and not take the other, because non-resident is non-resident. Be it that you live in the French side or you live on the Dutch side, but you're illegal. I don't like to use the word illegal, but for people to understand that that means you don't have a legal documentation, but you've worked here for 30 years, and if that person is legal, but he or she can prove that they pay the taxes through the tax office, they entitled. But if they're none, if they can't prove it, be it that you live in the French side or live in Cold Bay, you can't qualify for it, because you must be able to have documentation to prove that you've paid.
And I think that's where the issue comes, because when I was a teenager, I went to work at Mother Bay when I was 15 years old as a busboy. And many of the people that I hear complaining today that they can't get assistance are people that I knew at the time when I worked at Mother Bay. And in 1973, as a busboy, I was going home with $16 a week, working 48 hours a week. And there's nowhere in that tax office that I can prove that I worked at Mother Bay in 1973, 74, 75, and what I earned. Because I realized over the years, it wasn't until I was around 25 that I really had the opportunity to file at the time, and then saw what I got back in my tax return. So here you have big companies like Mother Bay that for whatever reason, many of the workers were never registered to pay taxes. They got the check every week. I was $16, some people more, and that was it. And some of these people today are in their 70s, and they can't get a pension, and they're saying they worked at Mother Bay, but there's no proof because there's no tax office documentation.
You know something, Oral? That could be a good reason to say, yes, hey, it's not my fault, we couldn't. But you know what's so strange? We have other cases of the same period who have proof. So it's not like no one, 0% from the French side cannot collect pension. We have people on the French side who have never lived on the Dutch side, and they're collecting pension. As I stated before, once you have documentation, I remember a gentleman, I won't call the name, but I could see him vividly sitting in front of me. We give him a deduction, and when we were having a hearing, and he was saying, while we're talking, I was explaining what all would be needed for that he can prove that he was. He's like, wait a minute, let me check. He went in his bag, taken a bunch of papers, all in Dutch, of course, and he showed me, are you talking about these things? When I went through it, he had all this documentation there, tax papers, all of those things. So it's not, and that was one case that I personally was involved with, and I saw that, hey, I thought no one used to file papers. But look at this gentleman used to file, and he lived on the French side, can't understand a word of Dutch. Okay, but he had the documentation.
Yeah.
So I've proved.
He was working with a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, so I'm saying there's a lot of people who didn't know, but had people who knew, and they did what they had to do. They did the legal thing. They put in the tax return. Now, should I punish a person or penalize a person that didn't, that did put in everything, and in this situation, the other one who, for whatever reason, be they didn't know, or they just listen, you know something, I live on the French side, so I don't need to put in for the tax rate because I'm French. People only, and what happened, we tend to wait until it's too late to find out what our rights are. Because, and this is one of the things I'm very serious about. We need to start teaching our children from school what their rights and obligations are when it comes to social insurance. So you don't get situations where that is only when they reach 55 or when it's 60 or 62, then you find out, oh, shucks, I never filed taxes, whatever, so how am I going to do? Because you know what's the situation now? Even if you want to file back taxes, the maximum amount of years you could go back is 5 years. So you can't go back 20 years to file taxes. Maximum amount that you could go back is 5 years. So basically, even if you want to, you can't fix that problem. The only way I personally see that we could do that is by changing the regulation or finding another way. But in any case, it entails making a change in a legal change in the ordinance that say that, or say, let's say we're going to adopt the law saying that we can use information that SZV has internally. Because one thing I could tell you, since 1996, when we introduced the sickness insurance for family members, we basically have a very good database of everyone that has been working, their family members and so on St. Martin. So we can trace, and that is right now why I personally feel that we don't have, I have information, so I could go check in my system to see from when you were working. In any case, if you're from 96 up to now, I could say, listen, from 96 up to now, I know Mr. Oral Gibbes. In our system, we have him, we have information on him. I have information on your wife, we have information on your children because you registered them at that time, so we have them in our system. And that will go on until you reach your pensionable age, and then we could use that. At this moment, legally, I can't use that information. And that is the ironic part of the information, of the situation. And up to today, I was talking to someone was asking me, not today, when I was in Miami, we was waiting for our flight to come back to St. Martin in the weekend, and a person was asking, yeah, why you have to apply 6 months from before for your old age pension? And he couldn't understand.
That's 6 months before you get the pensionable age, right?
Yes. And then I explained, so listen, the whole thing is, we depend on a third party or third parties to verify the period that you were insured. Who are the third parties? Census office or tax office. So if we wait until you reach 60 for you to apply, that means we won't be able to pay your pension, your first pension on time. The law states that your pension goes in the first of the month after you made the pensionable age, whatever age it is. So that means for us to reach that first of the month, let's say if you're making 60, you made 60 in April, suddenly the 1st of May is your first month that you're entitled to get pension. For us to make that date, you would need to get the apply, and we advise you to apply 6 months before, because once we get your application, we have to send it to the census office to verify. For whatever that it takes 2 weeks before, 1 week or 2 weeks before we send a batch to the census office. Census office have to process it. It might take them 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, for them to get it back. When we get it, we have to verify it again to double check to see the information, to see if you said you lived here 45 years and the census office saying you only live 40 years or only 35 years, we need to call you back in. There's a discrepancy here. Can you prove that the missing years that you were here, or do you agree for us to give you the deduction? And if you don't agree, that means you have to go find the proof. So that is going to put a hold until you bring the proof for us to make the necessary corrections. Once that is done, every month, because we have to pay by the 1st of the month, we close off the payroll between the 20th and 25th of the month, so that when we close it off, we could prepare the payrolls to send to the banks for the banks to be able to pay by the 1st of the month. So that means if you apply, if you're making 60 in April and you apply, even if you applied 3-4 months before, if everything is perfect, we need at least 3 months, because as I said, it takes 1 to 2 months for us to verify everything with the census office between back and forth, and 1 month for us to process it so we could make the payroll. So even, it's not that we have to work a whole month on it. We work on it one time, but the payroll, because the payroll closed, we can only the next month, then you would qualify to get it. The good part is that if you did, if you're not late, then you still get retroactively maximum 1 year. So if you're 1 year late, you get back 1 year pension back retroactively. If you're 2 years late, we can only give you 1 year, because the law states that we only go back 1 year.
I was telling Mr. Willemsberg just during the break that when my father was alive, he used to collect pension on the French side, on the Dutch side. It was a better time. It was a small, nice little island. Today now, in those days, we had just about maybe 3,000-4,000 people on the entire island. Yeah. It's a whole different operation, right?
Yes, definitely. It's completely different.
And what about if you're receiving a pension, right? Do you have to prove to the SZV annually that you're still alive?
We have different case scenarios. If you're living on St. Martin, we don't have the rule that you have to prove that you're alive every year, because basically, if you're living here and if you're not alive, we can easily find out via the census office, or even first of all, you open the newspaper and you see obituaries, so you know somebody passed away. And we always get verification. We have to verify that with the census office, and that the person really passed away, because you can't just go based on what is the newspaper. Sometimes it's a mistake. Not that it's the chances are, it's 99% that what's in the newspaper is correct, but some people have the same name. So you know Richardson, how many Lloyd Richardsons we have here. So which one? So you can't just go and block someone if you don't know which one it is. You have to verify that. But for persons that live outside of St. Martin, and outside of St. Martin is also on the French side. If you live outside of St. Martin, for those persons, you have to, every 3 months, you have to bring in or you have to send in what we call it, for if you're on the French side, what you call a certificat de vie. Or in Dutch,
every 3 months?
Every 3 months.
Wow.
And or in Dutch, we call it the attestatie de vita, or in English, a certificate of affidavit of life, a certificate of life. So every 3 months. So if you live in the States, you would have to send that every 3 months. Now you could choose to send it every 6 months, once a year. But once we get that, we pay according to the period that, the last period that we knew that we had a verification on the case. Now for persons who live outside of St. Martin, but within the country, the kingdom, that means Aruba, Curacao, the Netherlands, Saba, Statia, or Bonaire, those persons have to send in their certificate de vie or the attestatie de vita once every 6 months. Now we have some specific dates that these have to be sent. If you are a person that lives within the kingdom but outside of St. Martin, you have to send it in the period May 15 to June 15th, and the second period is November 15 to December 15. Once you send that those 2 times of the year, you are covered for that period. Now for persons outside of the Nez Antilles, of St. Martin, outside the kingdom, it's the first period is February 15 to March 15. Second is May 15 to June 15. The third one is August 15 to September 15. And the last one, November 15 to December 15. So once we get affidavit for that in that period, then we continue paying your pension.
All right. Oral Gibbes.
Dial your operator.
But then hold on. When you call, you have to stay and hold on the line, as we can't take your call. How healthy is the fund? Because a lot of people worry that we might not be able to meet the obligations down the road.
That is something that keeps us awake every day, because if we don't do anything, the fund, although right now we have some good reserves, if we don't do anything, those reserves are going to slowly but surely start disappearing.
Hold that thought. Let me take the call for you. Oral Gibbes Live, you're on call. Hello?
Good night.
Good night.
I may be deviating from the topic with SZV also, right? But I see Mr. Willemsberg to talk. Anyhow, yes, I have a suggestion to Mr. Willemsberg. When people come here sometimes, the doctor may have left, they'll have to send a letter or for your medicine or whatever. They tell you come back the next day. Fine. But when you come back the next day, you got to wait in line so long. Can't you arrange it somehow? If, for instance, sometimes one person is waiting on a check, they might have to wait so long, or some they have to travel. But then you have to wait so long where you could just walk in, ask for your letter, and leave. And then the place will be less full too, I think. So in the next, if one person is taking so much of time, send the next one to help the other people out there so long in the meantime, but it's second best. Suggestion. I leave it up to you. You run things, not me.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Well, that's a good suggestion. And these are things, he's not the first person that have brought up the point of the waiting period, especially when it comes to for the medical part. And this is something that, as you may know, or may have heard, we did a survey, independent survey by Mr. Julio Romney a few months ago. And these are some of the things that, although we had an all right score, but when it comes to the medical part, we had a lot of complaints, especially when it comes to waiting period. So we are looking at ways and means now how we can improve that, and that is part of what we call the SZV 3.0, that we are focusing on finding, on being more solution-oriented for these kind of things. So we take the suggestion, I will bring it back to, and as I said, I've heard it before, so we are looking at ways and means to make it feasible, because it has to be something that is workable.
Okay. Oral Gibbes live on caller. Hello? You're on live caller.
Mr. Willemsberg.
Yes, go ahead.
Everyone is, maybe I'm the only one who's wrong about this whole thing. Eh? They are saying that they are getting their pension late. But I say, no, you're not getting your pension late. You're getting your pension up front. Because for the month of April, I am getting them, I am a pensioner myself. Huh?
Yes.
I get my pension on the 1st of April for the month of April. But people see it as if you are paying them out for the month of March. I said no, maybe I am wrong. I said no. I said I wish I was working somewhere and my boss was paying me up front before I start to hit a stroke of work.
Well,
so maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
They're out there all the whole time saying, we get to the pension late, we get to the late, we get to the late, but it's not so.
Yes,
I think, huh?
Yes, well, it's not what you think. You are saying the correct thing, and I thank you very much for bringing that up, because I do get the complaint a lot that, SZV is always paying the pension late. No, we are paying the pension on time, because as I stated before, the pension, your rights begins on the 1st of the month after you make 60. So that means by the 1st of the month, we have to pay you. And what has been happening is that because the banks now, they work quite faster, once we send the payroll for them, they process the payroll one time. So if they get the payroll on the 28th, by the 29th, they put the money on the people's account. So now, and we have the case, the people say, but I didn't get April yet. But when they look on the account, they would see that they got the payment on the 29th of March. But that's the April payment. As the lady, the pensioner said, that we pay in advance. So we pay before on the 1st of the month. And a lot of people do not take that in consideration. As a matter of fact, sometimes, and like in these, sometimes people get in December, especially in December, they get paid twice. Because they get paid the 1st of December, sometimes we get a bonus. So they get it early in December. But by Christmas, they tell you, hey, but I didn't get paid yet for December. But they used up the Christmas bonus already because they got it the 1st of the month. And then we end up paying January, ends up being paid before the end of the year, the 29th or the 30th. And so they get in December, they pay twice. And people are still saying that they're not getting paid on time.
It's Christmas, they're happy.
So, and that is what people have to take in consideration, that the SZV pays by the 1st of the month. So that is when they have to check.
Let me take some calls here. Now, Oral Gibbes live and caller. Hello? Hey, caller? You're on live caller. Hello?
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Oral.
Good night.
And your guest. Good night.
Good night.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. What's the question, caller?
Yeah, I just calling to make one little suggestion about my doctor card, because I went to SZV, I presented all the documents, the two payslips, the contract, and everything, and now I had doctor card already, but now I got to get a receipt of check or payment from, I will get my money from my boss. I don't know when they come up. So I could ask you guys, I know you work at SZV, so you could give me a little briefing on that.
I'm not understanding that, yes, you have the doctor card, but you have to get the money for the card. Maybe you could be more clear as to what the question is.
Yeah, the question is that I get everything, the contract, the payslip, everything, but instead I have a receipt from my check or a receipt from all my boss pay me.
The receipt of what you bought.
You mean a pay slip?
A pay slip, yeah.
So, but you get your doctor card already?
No, I ain't got a doctor card because I got to go back to my boss and explain to them and tell me, what I walk with? I walk with the contract, right?
Oh, okay. So, no, what happens, your employer, this has nothing to do with pension, your employer has to fill in what we call the mutation form. and based on the mutation form, then we will put you in our system that you're working for this company. And once we have that information, if that is processed, then maybe you might have, if you're a first-time employee, then you...
No, not first time.
No, but in any case, so most probably, if you have your contract ended, and your employer did not send the mutation form stating that you have a new contract. So we need to get that from your employer. So once we get the mutation form, we will process that, and then we will issue a new card for you.
You were telling me before we started the program that you all had some strategic plans from 2016 on.
Yeah. Well, before I go into that, you asked the question about if the fund is healthy.
Yeah.
So let me finish answering that question. Yes, at this month, our healthiest fund is the old age pension fund, because it have quite reserve, and that we have invested so that we get a good return on investment. But if we do not take any measures to ensure the sustainability of the fund, the chances are that we have made some projections that if nothing, let's say if the age was not changed to 62, we could basically guarantee you that by 2025, we would have started using the reserves. And because that means at that time, the contribution that we collect and what we pay out in pension would or break even, or it would surpass the contributions. And for us to be able to continue paying the pension, we have to start taking monies that are reserved to start using that. And we can use Curacao as an example, where they had to change the age from 60 to 65 from one year to the other, because for the last years before 2013, they have 2-3 years, they were using the reserves. And once you start using the reserve, and it is expected that you're going to use the reserve, but if you start using the reserves too early, that means the money is going to finish a lot earlier also. So that's one of the reasons we have advised government, one, to increase the age. Our advice in principle was to 65, but we proposed to also, and government agreed, to phase it in. So instead of going to 65 one time, which gives us a little more room, we propose, and government agreed, that it has to go in, we go in first to 62, and then we advise that within 10 years it would reach to 65. That, we believe, that would give us room to maintain the funds healthy, and then to extend also the time that when we would have to start using the reserves to pay pension. Because when you start using it to pay pension, that means your reserve is going to go down. If you're using your reserve to invest so you could get return on investment, then the return on investment that you get because you have the reserve is what you can use. Then the interest that you receive, you can use to pay pension. But if you start using the reserve, that becomes a problem. So that's why, yes, we have a healthy fund, but we can't take for granted that we'll always be healthy.
Well, so every other time, all I have is 30 seconds remaining.
Okay. Well, so I will have to say that the SZV has embarked on what we call the SZV 3.0. And that means we have a strategy plan that for the next 4 years, from 2006 to 2018. And the main part, if there's anything that you could get from this strategy plan, is that we have put quality of service, customer experience, number one on our list of priorities. So that means we are doing everything, and we're going to do everything that is possible to improve the way that we deal with our clients. So be it that you're a pensioner or your employee, that gentleman who called that you have to wait long, that we're going to make changes. We are looking at ways to do changes. We are looking at changing our processes to make them more client-friendly. We want to go over to a new website, and we want to go over to make things that the new generation that is coming up, what they call the Generation X, that they can use the smartphone like everyone does, that they could also go on the smartphone and just click, and they get to SZV, and they get the information.
Well, so Rev, thank you, and much success.
Thank you very much for having me, And anytime you need, you know where to find me.
All right. I appreciate you coming and sharing that information with us. And that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Until then, good night. Take care. Bye.